Hi, and welcome to Womb Magic with Heidi Summers and Mandee Elam. This is a show and a movement dedicated to cultivating and unleashing the wild and free feminine within. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today, Mandee?
I am so good and so excited to hold the womb space with you and, bring attention to this, to our listeners, to our friends, our family, to ourselves. And I'm excited to dive in and just kind of see what appears each episode while we spend time and space within the energetic womb space.
Beautiful. I agree. I'm just so excited. This has been a project for us that has been kind of birthing for a while, and it's nice to kind of witness the activation through our own womb spaces, this show coming into being. I'm just so honored to be here with you.
You too. We'll talk much more about that with our listeners and ways to track your cycle and what we're talking about with the cycle. And it doesn't matter if you're young and you haven't, started bleeding yet, or if you're maybe a little bit older and you've gone through menopause. It doesn't matter. We all sync up with this cycle each and every month, and it doesn't matter where you are in your phase. So I'm just really excited to incorporate all of that and to welcome all of our listeners. And I just don't want anybody to get too nervous because everyone is invited.
Yes. I love that inclusion piece. And it is so important, people, we oftentimes, in alignment with the patriarchy, the system of power that is very much falling away for us right now, I feel that we consistently try to measure ourselves against, we have a measuring stick of what is and what isn't, what should be, what shouldn't. And with the womb space, womb magic, it's very much individualized. It's not about, if anything we say here doesn't fully align with you, listeners, friends, family, or even between Mandee and I, we're all so different and all so individual. So this is just kind of a conversation around what could be true for you. And if it doesn't resonate, you can always go within your own womb space and ask what feels true for me and feel into the alignment of what it feels like to be in your body and what that looks like. I think that's beautiful.
I agree. So what would you like to talk about first, Heidi?
I was thinking about that this morning, and honestly, I was thinking about what led me to this, because what led me to this space where I just want to talk about periods and your womb space and what that all means. And, what it means to live in alignment with your cycle, which is very countercultural for, Western society, the system we're kind of brought up in. And it's very innate as well. We've all lived those past lives where we've been healers and teachers of this sacred art of connecting in with the womb space. And so I was just thinking about what it meant for me. And honestly, within the last year, I've really tapped into these teachings and truths more for myself. And it was actually a conversation I had with you. I had a dream about the reawakening of my inner witch. And so I'd kind of gone through this process of clearing, my feminine energy and connecting with my inner priestess and, heart space and leading and teaching and connecting in with my intuition through my third eye space. And I kind of felt like I was clear from the heart space up through my crown chakra. But there was like a disconnect, from trauma, from life experience, just from, being a product of Western society, a disconnect between, from my heart space down. Like everything was clear up, and it was just kind of like, how do I now ground in these teachings that are so beautiful, and how do I bring things forward? How do I, create projects and women's circles, and how do I really bring this into my experience now for myself? And so the witch, which was an archetype that I had disconnected from for a long time, which probably was due to being burned as a witch or something in a past life.
What? No.
I think so. I think I was.
I'm being a little giggly and sarcastic because I think many of us, and a lot of our
Yeah,
listeners
exactly.
have absolutely experienced that, and we still are carrying the energetic wound of persecution. And so it's definitely a very potent point to talk about throughout this episode and throughout what we're talking about. I was even in preparation for this show, like listening to, there's a teacher, healer, seeker I love to follow, Bridget Nielsen, and she was like, yeah, like you get your period when you're, typically between like 10 and 14, 15, 16, and like, you're like given a tampon and like, here, go use it, keep it a secret, don't tell anybody about any of your feelings or what's happening. And so that's something I think that what you're highlighting with this witch wound is that we keep things secret and sacred and taboo out of a fear of persecution often.
Yeah. So I ended up having this like big witch emergence. I read the book Witch by Lisa Lister, which I know you have as well. And that served as a big activation for me to just like own all of it, own my shadows, own my light, and just step into it and see what needed to be healed so I could really serve others, and just enjoy life more, like not feel shame or guilt for my sexuality, for my femininity, for how I wanted to show up in the world. And so I remember I called you and I had a reading with you and we talked all about the witch wound and what was emerging for me. And yeah, it was really beautiful because I was in it, but I was also able to witness, this wasn't my first rodeo type thing. And with that, it just kind of felt like the last frontier. And it's funny because you would think that, we're birthed into this experience to live life as a human and as a divine being. But we're here as a human to learn some things and to be inside of our experience. And it was honestly like my last frontier to connect with my body so that I could actually, manifest things into my reality. And the womb space is so much this energetic holding space. It's our center of gravity as women between our head and our feet. It's a central point of power that controls, money, sex, and power. And so if we're looking at all of those things as like, life force energies, things that participate in life or create and birth life, well then, what are the fears there? What are the things to be cleared so that you can birth your realities into existence? So yeah, that's kind of how I got into this space where I'm at now, where I'm just like, let's all circle up and talk about sex, periods, all of the taboo things, and just clear it out, shake out the ash so we can live inside of our power, so we can live really authentically. So yeah, thanks for being such a big part of this experience for me. It's so beautiful that our souls met up in this timeline to do this work.
Right back at you, sister. I honor you so much. And it's funny, and I think a lot of our listeners and healers will resonate with this. A lot of times, after readings, you kind of clear a lot of what came through, and it's just you're in this kind of like in-between bubble, and it's this beautiful space. Almost feels like a womb space when you're doing readings and holding soul space. And I vaguely remember some of that, and since that reading, you and I Heidi and I have just blossomed and had this beautiful friendship created. And it's nice to think back to that. And it's like, oh yeah, we did talk a little bit about all that back then. And that's where some of these seeds got planted. And it's beautiful. I honor you so much. And I'm so excited to have this conversation. I was telling Heidi a little bit before the show for our listeners that I'm going to use this as an opportunity to really dive into my own womb space and my own cycle. I've certainly done it here and there a little bit. I track my moon cycle. I try to be in tune with it, but I can absolutely go deeper. And so this entire project is going to be very much an opportunity for me to stay in alignment within myself. And I'm grateful for you and for this show to be an accountability partner for that.
That's beautiful. And I love that because that's so real, right? That's so authentic to say that, like, hey, we're here to learn, and we're never going to stop learning, and we're never going to stop integrating. It's just like deeper levels of our experience, of our worth, of our journey. And I love that because it's just life. It's life to be lived here, to be experienced. And that shows the listeners, that shows me that, you know, it's never going to end. And that there's no hierarchy here, right? Like, we're all here to, just on different parts in our journey, to share, to hold space, to receive healing, and to share healing. So thank you for sharing that. I feel that as well, that it's just a great opportunity to dive deeper, to hold myself more accountable to the work, because it is a practice. And just like with any practice, it takes time, it takes patience. And it's so funny to look at this stuff and look at the actual birthing of a child and what it takes to, you know, you have the 9 months typically, and there's all kinds of physiological things that rise and fall away with that. It takes great patience, and then there's labor pains of, you know, birthing this being, this soul into existence. And so much of that is so much in alignment with birthing projects, with birthing your own practices, with your womb space, of just being really patient, not rushing anything. There's no one to beat. There's no, you know, clock to chase. It's very much just living inside of your body and saying, okay, I'm like just going to take time and be on this journey, and however long it takes is how long it takes. It's so individual. So yeah, I honor you.
I think that's, yeah, I honor you. I think that's what the womb magic is, you know. It's just honoring authentically where we're at and getting clearer on our power and our truth. And it's not easy to do that in this society. And none of us were really taught that, you know. There's very few of us who were lucky to have, you know, mothers and aunts and grandmothers who honored a more traditional cycle and womb space. But really, many of us just kind of grew up in this generation where it was like, all right, as you were highlighting earlier, you know, aligning more with the patriarchy and having a lot more focus, I would say, on getting things done and pushing through pain and ignoring problems with our body. You know, I was listening a little while ago to someone speaking about when you get really heavy cramps and you're feeling completely bloated and terrible and your body's like screaming at you, you know, it's because your body wants you to pay attention to it and you're doing too much and you need to rest and come within. And women who don't experience a lot of cramping or issues when they have their period often are in a little bit more balance, or honor things as they come up and don't try to push it away or suppress it or ignore it or cover it with a pill or something else like that, which we're so used to doing. So even though this is ancient and this is something we're meant to honor, it's also very much a new frontier that we're going back into, that so many of us just grew up not talking about, not having an awareness around. And I'm excited to kind of see what's unearthed here in this space.
That's beautiful. And I think that's a perfect segue into talking about, you know, menstrual cycle awareness. What does that look like? What's the energy usually around your cycle? And when can you be most productive? So when we look at society and what's been kind of projected, like work 8 to 5, 40 hours a week, and this is, you know, set schedule and what it looks like, well, that's very much in alignment with the first part of your cycle typically. So you have, you know, once you stop bleeding, so you have day 1, which is when you start bleeding. Once you stop bleeding, that's the beginning of kind of your maiden phase of your cycle. Maiden moving into mother, where you have this more extroverted energy. Even if you're an introvert, you're more likely to want to spend time with people. You're more likely to make lists and check them off and get things done, and that excites you because you have that extra bubble of energy to get that stuff done, because at that time you have estrogen rising, you have testosterone rising, and that gives you that extra push, not to compete with men or compete with the masculine, but to use your masculine energy with your feminine to start working on the projects you have in motion. So this is like just continuing, you know, you already have the bike built and you're just riding your bike around the block because it feels good, it's what excites you, all that kind of stuff. And same thing with even physical activity in this phase is heightened typically. You're more excited to have sex, you're more excited to run around the block, you know, go to your favorite yoga class, maybe even try new things because you're more adventurous in this phase. Then in the second part of your cycle, that's when you kind of draw within and you start to see where things are kind of aligned versus misaligned. So the PMS symptoms I've seen in myself and in women I know to be a direct correlation to whether or not they're satisfied with where they're at in their life, and whether or not they're honoring, or the people in their lives are honoring their energy, their time, their resources, and their feminine, their womanhood. And so I find that like anger and rage is beautiful things to be harnessed at certain times and in the right way. But this energy, it gets heightened because your womb space is telling you, hey, I'm ready to release all that doesn't serve, physically and energetically. So if you're in a relationship that's not serving you, you might find that your cramps are more intense. If you're, you know, with a partner that's not honoring, you know, your desires, or even is just a little negative towards you in this time, doesn't give you the space you need, you'll find that you strongly are more inclined to create boundaries within relationships, with people, and with yourself, and you're more honest with yourself at this time. So I encourage people to just take this time to sit down and have a minute with yourself, and it's like, okay, what do I really want? What do I really need? What am I ready to let go of? What am I ready to call in as well? And during your bleed, I find is the most important time to really give yourself the solitude and the extra self-care that you've been craving. It's a great time to write, to journal, to birth new projects, new ideas, and release it all back to the earth. So it's kind of like this beautiful cycle of calling in, letting go, and release.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
What's your experience with that, Mandee, if you don't mind my asking, with like the more extroverted aspects versus introverted? Because I know we're all so different. What's your understanding or experience?
I love this question. This is powerful for me. I was really reflecting upon it this morning, and I'm like, you know, I got my period when I was 10, like a month before I turned 11. And I remember being like a year into my period, and I had moved to Vermont, and I was in class. I was in like 6th grade, and I had these horrible cramps, and I felt absolutely terrible. And I remember asking my teacher, like, hi, and I was a new kid in school. I had just moved there, and I was like, hey, I really don't feel good. Can I go to the nurse for some ibuprofen? I have some really bad cramps. And she looks at me straight in the eye, and she goes, and this is beautiful and empowering, so don't get scared. She was like, honey, I completely honor you, and if you don't feel good, you can just go to the nurse. You don't need to tell me why or what's going on or let anybody else know. I just respect that, and no problem. And she could probably see it in me, like I was definitely wilting and pale, not feeling good, and it made me feel really nice because it felt like this welcoming, like, oh, you know what, it's okay, and I get to honor this, because I was very much fighting that, oh my gosh, what if people know? I'm, you know, so much more mature than other people. I'm physically more mature. I'm emotionally more mature. I'm this new kid who's just like weird new kid who has her period and most other people don't yet. And I felt really scared going up and asking her. And then when she gave me that permission, it kind of was almost like a rite of passage. And then from that moment on, I really started to say, okay, like what is going on with my cycle? And I would always pay attention to it. And I would get really bad PMS and really heavy periods and really bad cramps, but I never really knew what that meant until later on, you know, much, much later on. And so now that I've been more in tune and I've been off birth control for about, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years now. I've really gotten much more in tune, and my cycle is longer. I started having like a 40-day cycle. Now I'm down to about like a 32 or 3 day cycle, so I'm getting closer to that linking up with the moon and being at 28 days, which is nice. But I've really come to notice that I am a full-fledged woman in so many ways. And as soon as I start to bleed, it's like, there's relief. And I feel my estrogen rising and I feel creation coming on. And it's often like towards the end of my period when I get like the most busy. And I'm like, actually, I want to go for a hike and I want to go, out for a swim, or I want to go do this or that because I have a lot more energy. And then come like week 3 or so, I kind of get pre-PMS and I want to be more introverted and I want to kind of read more, work on what I'm working on. And then I feel some rage each month. It's kind of that, like, I like to hiss because it's just a fun sound, but it's that like energy. And
I love it so much.
I'll burn everything down and a little bit of dragon within you coming up and like, don't cross me today. You're still yourself. You're still your authentic self. And people often honor and appreciate that little bit of sassiness to you too, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, she does have a little bit of a backbone in her. What's this about? And what was your question originally? I feel like I went off on like a nice little tangent.
I was just enjoying it so much and like picturing like you having a dragon guide for whatever reason, which I love, like a purple dragon. What was that question? I don't know. It was, what's your experience of the cycle and how did it differentiate? So I think that you did answer the question, and that's so beautiful that it's not like, it is so individual, I love how towards the end of your period, your energy rises and you feel like doing more outdoorsy things and all of that. I think that's just a great example of what we're talking about, that everyone is so unique and everyone's experience deserves to be honored. I adore the idea and the experience of rites of passage and ritual. I think that's something that's really been lost in a lot of our society, except for, like marriage ceremonies typically, or funerals. And so it's nice to hear that, even if it was a small moment, that moment really mattered to you and that stuck with you. And that just shows how important it is to, when we can, give ourselves and share with others these rites of passage, these moments that really serve to define how we experience life at that time. And it evolves from there. So I was thinking about that the other day as well, like my experience of my first period and what all that looked like. And I was a late bloomer. I was 16, and I remember being in ballet class, and I was doing stuff at the bar, and you wear like the pink tights and black leotards, so you're in this tiny little outfit, which isn't conducive to life just happening. And and there was a moment where like it just started happening, and it was like bloody swan in the core, and I remember feeling really shameful because I hadn't yet understood the beauty of it, or the beauty of being a woman, or what that looked like. And so I think a lot of people have sort of traumatic experiences with the beginning of their period, and that deserves to, go back and honor and allow yourself to find the beauty of that, and allow that to, just give you allow yourself to go back and mother yourself, essentially, and call on the Mandees who are great at holding space, and allow yourself to just, take some time to say, you know what, like, even if it wasn't perfect, I honor what was, and I can now, reinitiate myself. And I think that's really empowering, because so many people are like, oh, I really wish, like, as you start to tune in more with your cycle, it's like, I wish I had this rite of passage. I wish I could like go into a red tent each month with all of my sisters and like bleed under the dark moon. And it's just so great. And I think that's, that's desired because it is so ancient and deep wisdom within us. But we can create that experience for ourselves here and now. And it is, we are modern women recreating this like medicine woman movement. And it's going to look different this time around, and that's totally okay. And it's still beautiful, and you can still create ritual and throw yourself a bleeding party or whatever you want to do. Just give yourself the time to honor and allow it to be perfect, however it shows up.
I love that. I was reflecting upon as you were, explaining what happened with you and your first experience, and it was so funny. I was like, I'm such a different breed, but like I was so like couldn't wait to grow up. And like for my 9th birthday, my mom asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I was like, I want you to teach me what sex is. And and she did. My mom's awesome, and she honored it and was like, all right, let me like wrap my lobes around this for a few weeks, and like I'll get back to you on your birthday. But she was like, she was happy because she wanted to teach me it as opposed to me just learning it through the grapevine like most other people. And, she made this beautiful diagram and showed me all about it and how everything works and what sex is and the point of it. And it was really beautiful. And then it was about a year or two later, because it was, right before my 11th birthday, I was at my other friend's birthday party. And I had gotten my period, but it was like I went to the bathroom and I noticed it, and then I kind of kept it to myself. I was like, oh, it's happening. I was like so excited. I'm like, I can't wait for my mom to get here, and I can't wait to tell her. And so it was really funny because then the next day I was like, Mom, like I got my period. It's like happening. I'm so excited, and she like taught me how to use a pad and everything. And then the next day we went to this concert as a family, and my dad was like, I went with my mom, my stepdad, and my brothers. We went to Dr. John Little Feet in America at this place called Gardner's Basin in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and it's like right on the waterfront, and it's so fun, and there's all these people there. And my dad had been traveling and sent back like a shirt from Hawaii, and it was like a half shirt because those were super popular in the 90s. And so it like exposed my midriff, and my mom was like, I think you're a little too young to be wearing that. Like, you got the body going on. And I'm like, but Mom, I just got my period and I'm going to a concert and I want to like look cool. And so she let me wear it. And I just remember dancing and dancing and dancing at this concert and having the best time to some songs that are still some of my favorite songs today. And I feel like that was like a gift from the universe and like this nice like initiation of celebration and who I am and my womanhood. And I was really excited about it.
I love that so much. I can just see it happening. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I had this weird body. Like I'm 5'9" now, and I'm 33 years old, and I was 5'9" in 6th grade. I haven't grown since 6th grade. So
wow.
Yeah, so I was just like, whoa, this weird, ancient Amazonian woman body showing up here, and now in today's society, and it was very interesting and it was beautiful. And I think about that and how I'd like to really incorporate that when I have children or when I'm holding space for other women. It doesn't have to be this taboo thing. It's a celebration. Something else I was studying, and it kind of changes, and or just something I wanted to bring light to while I'm thinking about it is, I felt this pressure to use tampons because I would see them on commercials everywhere, and I was an athlete. I was really into basketball at the time, and, it was all like, use these tampons, like Playtex Sport or whatever was coming out at the time. And I remember, like, asking my mom, this is probably when I was about 12, a year or two after I'd had my period, and I was like, I'm ready. It's like summertime. I want to use a tampon so I can go to the beach and stuff, and she's like, all right. And it was the worst experience of my life. I remember putting it in, and it was like painful and horrible. And I'm like, get it out. But it wouldn't come out because there wasn't enough blood at the time. And I was just like freaking out about it. And then I got used to it after a while, started using them. And within like the first couple of times I was using tampons during my cycle, my body started to reject it. And this is at like 12 or 13 years old. My body's like, no, not coming in here. And as soon as I'd put a tampon in, I'd start cramping and my body would start pushing it out. And I still experience that. I'll use one every now and then for like the beach or swimming or something. And I try, if I do use one, to only use like organic without the chemicals, because I would get feverish. I'd get like the toxic shock syndrome. I'd get like feverish and crampy, and my body would ache, and I'd get nauseous. And so I think that was just something that was really built into me in my womb space, as, you know, I don't know, as I guess a buffer to protect me against what some of the things are. And I was learning about this recently. Actually, Bridget Nielsen, on that same same YouTube I was listening to, she mentioned that, you know, the wall of the cervix and the vagina is only about a cell deep. And it's like one of the most potent places if you want to, you know, create toxicity in a woman's body is to put something into her womb space, because she'll absorb it immediately because of how incredibly thin the walls are and the cells are at that cellular level. And so they absorb all kinds of toxic and bad things. And so if our listeners, many of you I'm sure do know, but many of our listeners might be new and might not know that a lot of tampons have a lot of bleach in them and other really bad pesticides or other kinds of toxins and things that really poison our bodies, and it's not healthy for us, and it takes a lot of life force out of us. Bridget Nielsen was even saying that even essential oils are too strong to use in your vagina, and that you should, if you're feeling like you want to cleanse or some sort, do maybe a yoni steam, but never put like essential oils up there. Try your best to not use tampons as much as possible, because they are really toxic, and we have to honor, you know, the sacredness of our womb and how, you know, how special that is and how easy it is for it to absorb toxins and other things that aren't good for us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I was thinking about my experience with tampons and all of that, and being in dance and growing up in that world. It was very much like, of course, you just use a tampon because you don't want to be a bloody swan. And and so yeah, I was using tampons from, you know, the beginning, and I still use them now. I have recently, of course, it's like the organic, like no terrible, awful, you know, great branding, but terrible for you things. So I've been using the organic cotton ones, which are great. And for me, when I'm out and about and doing things, that's like what's most comfortable for me right now. But I have been noticing that on days where I don't have to work or leave the house, that I'm much more inclined to do like a free bleeding type situation or wear a pad, so that I can just kind of be with the bleed and be with the cycle and allow the flow, the literal like flow of energy. And it's so nice to just kind of be in that space where you can connect with it on a deeper level and just allow your body to be, you know, to be as still as it wants to be, and, you know, not worry. For those of us that tend to, you know, be nervous about if you go out and like, what if you're bleeding everywhere, and what that looks like, I think I'm still healing, you know, that part for me, like what that feels like, what that looks like, and just kind of owning it versus, you know, feeling like I have to wear a tampon. I think, yeah, it's just a nice like way to connect in. I forget where I was going with that. But yeah, good stuff.
No, exactly. And that's something, you know, each woman has to think about individually, you know, what works best for you in managing and in handling your period, especially in today's society. You know, like, hey, most of us are still working full-time jobs and doing crazy things, and we do need something to support us. Something that's gotten really popular is the Diva Cup. I used it once a long time ago. It didn't work well for me. I'm going to try it again and I'm going to buy some. I've been using pads, but I hate that because I know they're ending up in a landfill, and it's terrible and not good for the environment. But I've been seeing there's reusable pads coming out now. There's like panties called Thinks that like absorb it, and you can wash them. I think Jenny, our fearless leader, Jenny, here on Heart Over the Ego, I think she tried some of those and enjoyed it and liked it and had good reviews about it. I'll have to ask her next time I speak with her, maybe on the Alchemy Sisters. But, there's all these different options that come in
Right.
and what you can do. And a huge thing for many women, and I'm sure we'll dedicate a whole episode to this in the future, but when you bleed and you have all of this amazing blood within you, that blood is incredibly fertile. And it's full of all kinds of nutrients and minerals and magic and wonderful things because each month, you're creating enough energy to possibly produce another life. And with that, the same thing like we were highlighting a little bit earlier, if you're not giving birth to a baby, you might just be giving birth to a creation or something really beautiful about your soul essence or who you are. But when I'm referring to Bridget Nielsen again, because she said, I really feel like, the woman's body is almost like a microcosm or organism of the divine feminine in itself, and that the earth is the divine feminine, and the earth is like the ultimate womb space, and that, we as women individuals in our bodies are microcosms of that, and that when we give our blood back to the earth, which in many indigenous cultures and ancient tribes and times, that was a point of ritual, was to gather your blood or collect it if you can, or just free bleed and nurture the earth and offer fertilization. So there's a lot of women who collect their blood and then put it in their garden or around their plants or put it out into the woods or into the earth. And when you do that, you reignite an energetic connection between you and the earth and the divine feminine, and it creates an energetic imprint. And so that's something that I have not done. I've heard about it over and over again. I know tons of women who do it. I love it. I honor it, but I have not collected my own blood to give back to the earth, and now I want to. I'm like, all right, next time I get my period, which it should be in about 10 days or so. I just went past my ovulation, and I'm going into bitchy PMSing here, so getting ready for that. But it's a big intention that I want to make because I want to energetically bond with the earth on a deeper level than I have.
I love that so much. I've been thinking about that a lot as well. So it's great that you mentioned that because it just reminded me that, I want to do that soon, give back to the earth the earth gives so much to us. The earth supports us and nurtures us and offers us so much. And sometimes we just get so busy that we forget, even if we are connecting with the energy and we're spending time, with our feet in the dirt and all that good stuff. I think there is something really powerful to be experienced and witnessed with giving your blood back to the earth. So I'm going to commit to doing that as well. There was something about that. I think it's also, there's something grounding about that. It feels like an anchor when I just think about the process and feel into the energy of it. It feels that, and I'm sure we'll have much to share from our own experiences, but it feels that it anchors your divine feminine energy back into the earth and gives you a greater, like a deeper relationship. It's almost like giving an offering to a guide or an angel that you work with and kind of anchoring in and connecting deeper with that energy in that way. I'm excited to see what rises with that. That's such a beautiful practice, and I'm just excited.
I agree. If you're just tuning in, I am Mandee Elam, and I am here speaking with Heidi Summers, and each week we're hosting an episode on Heart Over Ego Radio called Womb Magic. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Womb Magic. Is that our page, Heidi?
Womb Magic Movement.
Womb Magic Movement. Come and play with us on Facebook. We're going to be here every Friday morning as of right now. That may change in the future, but as of right now, every Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 Central Time. And you can follow Heart Over Ego Radio. We have our own Facebook page. We host a weekly show called The Alchemy Sisters each week. And by June or mid-June, every day of the week, we're going to have a new episode for you guys. So just wanted to let our listeners know that this is Womb Magic, and we will be here, and we will be coming back, and we're excited that you're on this journey with us. Heidi, what do you want to discuss in the next part of our show?
I was just thinking about connecting in with the seasons, and in our individual cycle, we go through pretty much all of the seasons within one cycle. We have
True.
the beginning portions where it's kind of like spring and summer and play and frivolity, and then there's autumn, where we kind of have more of this witchy, wild woman coming through, where she's a little bit more fiery and a little bit more, opinionated about who she is and how she shows up in the world. And then kind of in the winter, we have more of, day 1, day 2, maybe even day 3 of our bleed, where we have this drawing within and sinking back into the earth, kind of withdrawing our roots even deeper down into the core of the earth to, then be ready to come back into spring, kind of that crone energy, ancient wise woman during that phase. And I was just thinking about, right now in the Northern Hemisphere, we're experiencing spring. And what that looks like for us, different things we can call in and align, the energy of the world around us, also with the energy of our cycle. And even if you do experience that kind of, spring, summer, autumn, winter in one cycle, you can still tap into the energy of, say, spring, which we're in right now, inside of each aspect of that. So it's like, okay, what does spring represent right now? And I was just kind of sitting with that energy, and it's, fertility, it's new growth, it's flowers. The bees are coming in like crazy right now for me, just bringing in abundance and wealth and what that looks like in all aspects, and just kind of connecting in with the plant life, with the energy of the earth, with the energy of, we're so affected by the energy of the earth. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, I feel, to kind of drop into that space, and it's like, okay, what is best in this time for me right now? And then you can start to look at sort of that yin and yang balancing. And I have a good friend who's an acupuncturist who, I think you and I were talking about this the other day, of what it means to be yin, what it means to be a feminine energy, primarily on this planet and in this timeline. And the yin energy, it's very much this restful energy, but it's also very strategic. So yin is not without action. It just chooses the opportune time for the action to take place. And I think that, if we're talking about languaging and how we're speaking our truths into our lives, it's important to just kind of look at what do words really mean, and what's the energy behind those words, because it's, centuries of usage of certain words carry the ancestry with them. So I think it's important to note that, yang energy, the masculine, is more explosive in nature. It's more like the fireworks that go off. And we have those times in our cycles where we feel that big burst of energy, and we just, want to do something, really big or exciting or whatever. Even if it's only for 5 minutes within our cycle, we'll feel that burst of energy wherever it's at. You can kind of go back and identify, that was like a big bang kind of moment, explosion into being type happening. But we are primarily yin creatures when we're connecting, when we're using our womb space as our power source. If you tap into your body in a different way and you're less connected with your womb space, then your yin energy might not be your true source of power, just like that's not how you're aligned. Everyone's so different. So I always encourage people to take this with a grain of salt, because energy, sometimes manifests in a male body or female body differently. But overall, the culture of our experience of being a woman is highly yin in nature. So even when we have extra energy to give, we're not necessarily being a yang energy. We're not being that explosive energy. We're being highly feminine when we're being very strategic and planning and getting things done. So I think that's kind of nice to see because, you know, we do have that play of masculine energy inside of our beings and inside of our awareness and experience. But it's nice to see, hey, when I'm being in my power, I am being feminine. I'm being the utmost yin. My utmost womanhood is expressed in that time. And it kind of takes, I guess for me, why that was important to see is rather than thinking like I am sometimes deemed as an intense person. I like to, you know, I have my schedule, I get things done. I'm very fiery in nature, and I have times where I'm very introverted or I'm very extroverted. But it's nice to see that, you know, for me, for my energy, what that means is I'm just being in my power. And so whether it's coming across as like the PMS kind of bitchy, you know, with magic witch woman who's just working her magic and getting shit done, or just being really restorative and being, you know, inside of my body, just being with that experience alone. Like, it's all perfect. It's all good. It's all an expression of, you know, me being in my power as a woman. And if that identifies with you as, you know, listener, whoever you are, I think that's something to be explored. Like, what do these words mean to me, and what are these what do these seasons mean for me in my life? And then you can start really planning with the cycle of the moon. You can start planning with your own energy and, you know, taking notes during each day of your cycle and just seeing where your energy's at. And you can then best harness, like, when do I want to go out and do this big project, or when do I want to, you know, plan this event, or when do I want to just be, have my calendar free and clear so that I can just be with myself, read a good book, take a bath, you know, take some time for yourself. And that's powerful to me. Understanding, having the knowledge, the applied wisdom of, I know myself and I know my truth. And then you're less likely to make compromises that are outside of your truth, right? So whenever we're making compromises outside of our truth, that's when we start to feel more of that anger, more of that rightful rage, because we're not living in alignment with our highest good. And I kind of got off on a tangent there.
Oh, no, it's absolutely beautiful. And we needed to talk about the seasons, you know, because we technically, if all was well and good and the earth was balanced and everything was beautiful and healed, like, you know, most all women would be on a 28-day cycle with the moon. And so I think it's incredibly important to talk about the potency of the seasons throughout our cycle and all of that. And then I thought, you know, the power of words is incredible. And this whole yin and yang energy is very much a part of what many people are studying right now. And I love that you brought light to that and shared that. And I think it's a perfect segue, too, into another thing we wanted to talk about with the power of words. And, you know, for me, something that's been really sticking out and, you know, repeating in my mind as we've been preparing for this show is that the word vagina is like Latin for like veil for a sword or sheath for a sword. And I didn't like that. I'm like, oh, I'm not, you know, my vagina isn't just some sheath for the sword. Like, it's so much more than that. Right. And I enjoy using words like yoni, and I enjoy a lot of other words. And I know you have a lot of expertise around this subject. So I'm curious about what some of your favorite words are right now. And if you do use the word vagina, or if that's falling away, and how that feels to you.
I love that. Yeah, I am big into language and your words and the power of your words and how it really does carry weight. And so I think it's interesting to go back and, you know, start to look at, like, what are the anatomical names given to our, you know, entire womb space, which is the full contents of our lady landscape, which is one of my favorite terms, and also the energy of this space. And for me, I've, you know, kind of one word in particular that is has fallen away heavily in the last year has been masturbation.
Oh, me too. Self-harm.
Like
it means self-harm.
exactly.
No.
Yeah, no. Self-pleasuring is what it is, and it's connecting into your intrinsic power to allow yourself to just be with your body and be with your experience and be, take ownership of this beautiful source of power and, fire energy that can bring so much into your life. So self-pleasuring is something rising for me. I think that vagina hasn't been a word that I ever really resonated with. I was like, ugh, it just doesn't like roll off the tongue.
Yeah,
It's just one of those.
I used vajay for a while, but vagina has never been a big thing for me.
Yeah, I will say a word. Sometimes I feel like I just say things for shock factor to start a conversation or to just rile people up because I was raised in a really conservative environment. And so sometimes that's just kind of my fiery nature, but I have been enjoying pussy lately because it's like talking about the entire energy and contents of your feminine space. And I just like it because it's been utilized and it's been taken advantage of and utilized as a derogatory sense in a derogatory way, but there's a lot of power in reclaiming a word that has previously been used in a negative sense and now can be kind of harnessed back in as like, no, this is mine and this is what is true for me. So it feels kind of liberating to use that word and to explain, to people that aren't aware what it really means. And the definition is very much like, empowering, and I forget the exact definition right now. I'll have to bring that up later and have that for us on another show. But that word's really beautiful for me. I do like yoni. I think that sometimes for me it's like what feels powerful to me in that moment, and sometimes I find I like yoni when I'm wanting to be really ritualistic and go into like a trance and kind of connect with that womb magic, Isis temple, goddess creation space. And then when I'm feeling more just kind of powerful and fiery and PMS, don't mess with me kind of energy, that's when I'm like, oh, pussy. So,
I love it. And because I'm on the studio, I was able to Google, the definition of pussy. And of course, it just came up as a cat, and that's it. And then I did definition of yoni. And yoni, it says, is a noun, and it's Hindu. And the vulva, especially as a symbol of divine procreative energy, conventionally represented by a circular stone. So I liked that one a lot more.
I like that. That's so funny. A cat.
And then yoni definition, a stylized representation of the female genitalia that in Hinduism is a sign of generative power and that symbolizes the goddess Shakti.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
I like that right now. That's feeling good.
That feels really good. And that's the thing. There's so much power behind words. And, the masturbation thing and it meaning self-harm, like it just sounds, you say like, oh, I'm going to masturbate. Like it does. It sounds yucky. It has like a nasty ring all the way down through all your chakras into your core. Like it doesn't feel right. And self-pleasure is so much more empowering and more beautiful and soft. And I think of the word pussy a lot, and it's used all the time, men especially as like as a nastier word for like calling someone a vagina or a woman, because that was the biggest insult, for a long time. And we're still growing out of that. So, oh, you're a pussy or you're a puss bag or something. And I've caught myself saying that. Like, it's just like, it's part of the culture and things that kind of come through you. And I'm like, wait a minute, what am I giving this power to here? So I love that you're using it to take it back. And I know a lot of women are using that. And we saw that a lot with the Women's March, and everybody was making the pussy hats that were all, pink and cool and folded up weird like a vagina on your head. And, it was it was very interesting. And so I just love that we're starting to break down the confines. We're starting to say, hey, wait a minute, every single woman in the world has to go through this if you're going to be a woman. Let's, like, not have as much taboo. Let's talk about it and let's honor it the best way we can. Back in the day when they would throw everyone in the red tents and whatnot, it was also so that I think it was initially, I don't know, I have to study a little bit more about it, but there's definitely a lot of cultures who used it as kind of a banishing, like, oh, the women are going crazy, they're bleeding, send them all together over there. And then there's a lot of cultures that really embraced it, and it was this beautiful time to spend with the women that you love and honor one another, and and you would do each other's hair and take baths and relax, and, there was lots of hugs and physical touch. One of the first women's circles I ever went to, I did this exercise, and now whenever I lead retreats, I do this same exercise because it was so powerful for me. But it had all of the women, get into groups of 3 or 4, and then you would take 1 minute and one participant would stand in the middle, and you'd create like just a tiny circle of 2 or 3 people around the woman, and you'd have her close her eyes and just be, and you would touch her, whether it was stroking her hair or rubbing her shoulders a little or her foot, or, just like a little bit of like petting or rubbing your back, like. And I remember closing my eyes and receiving this energy, and it was uncomfortable at first because it's like, wait a minute, hello, we're in America, we don't touch each other and do that. Like, okay, we can have hug time every now and then, but you have to really like that person, and it can't be for too long. And so this whole, idea of touch and the feminine, and part of the feminine and the feminine cycle has really fallen away. And, that was something that was very honored back in the day when women were gathering in the red tents and gathering in circle, was this, need for connection and touch to hold one another and to feel loved. And so in that exercise, you just set the timer for a minute, the person in the middle closes their eyes and just allows themselves to be held by their sisters and nurtured and loved and given energy by their sisters. And I remember like this one girl, like I had this cramp in my calf for like 3 weeks or something. Mm-hmm. And was at like a pulled muscle and was having the hardest time with it. And her energy, like I didn't bitch and moan. I didn't complain about it. I didn't tell anybody about it. And she intuitively was guided right there and did some like work on it and massaged it in that minute's time. And I didn't have a problem with it again. It healed it.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
It's incredible the space that we can hold for one another and what we can do simply with intention, with touch, with opening up our heart space, and with focus.
I love that. That's so important. It made me think of my own cycle and my tendencies when I'm on my bleed, and I actually tend to get a massage in the first few days, but I only will see like a specific person that is highly nurturing and so gentle, and I just allow my body to be like in this beautiful meditative space, receiving like nurturing touch for an hour, and that's just the best thing of life. So I love that that's a practice that we can harness, in even that small but so profound way, for just like it shows the power of a minute, like when time transcends itself and you're no longer in that space confined by the time, you're just in the experience. So I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. And I encourage our listeners to try that. If you're like, oh, I'm getting together with, some women this weekend and maybe we'll give it a try. It might be uncomfortable or awkward at first. We're not used to, Americans especially get ripped on by the rest of the country a lot because of our lack of touch and our lack of communication. So, it's something that's uncomfortable at first. But at the same time, I love, the power of being uncomfortable and the vulnerability there. And if you're laughing or being goofy and raising joy, and that's all elevating because it takes a while to kind of get centered and, I can relax and receive this, because that's something that many of us, especially as women, we're not taught to receive. It's give, give, give. What? This is uncomfortable. uncomfortable, how do we receive? So even if you go and you try it and you're just having some drinks with your girlfriends this weekend and you're like, let's try this little exercise we heard about on Womb Magic. And if it goes well, wonderful. If you laugh and you're uncomfortable, that's wonderful too. It's just about bringing attention to ourselves and our bodies and our energies and what we can transmit from one another.
So beautiful.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that if anyone tries this and they feel called to share, please share on our Facebook page and let us know how everything's going with you. We definitely want this to be an interactive experience where we can all share and learn and grow together.
Yes, and we thank you for tuning in and witnessing our first show of Womb Magic. It's only going to grow and get very interesting. We hope to have lots of guests and different discussions and topics and kind of rip off the Band-Aid of the taboo around our periods and our womb space and bleeding and honoring our moon cycles. And I'm just so honored to be here and to hold this space with you, Heidi. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mandee. This has been a true joy.
And you can like us, follow us on Facebook, Womb Magic Movement. You can find us on Heart Over Ego Radio. And we will be here every Friday morning as of right now. We'll let you know if that time changes at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 8:30 a.m. Central Time, 6:30 a.m. on Pacific Time. And there will be, if you want to look for replays of the episode, we'll post them to our Facebook page, and it will also be uploaded automatically via Spreaker to YouTube videos and the Spreaker podcast. So it'll be easy to find us. Just Google Heart Over Ego Radio or Womb Magic, and you'll find us.
Beautiful.
Heidi, would you like to maybe share a tiny bit of light language or say a little prayer or anything to close out our space this morning?
I think that's beautiful, yes. We'll do a little bit of light language. So I invite you wherever you're at to simply drop in, allow your eyes to close, maybe palms up to be in a more receptive space or palms down to ground in. Whatever feels good for you is right and perfect in this space. This light language is for opening up our hearts to receive more, to ground and to draw our awareness from our third eye space into our bodies, into our womb space, to see what is here for us. To open up a conversation with our womb space this week. To simply just be present and see what she says to us. Hanayamiya Keadirai Sanatu Horaya Biasutkiayatana Hoeteamana Heasuti Kutkama Hoetiayasa Heavuti Aimana Ti Aimana O Si Ayapunati Akuisama O Ereaya Si Ayamana Kioti Aramea Soetia Kuraya Hea Sanaivia Motiki Ashavas. Open and ready, hearts are full. Encourage you to breathe, allow the energy to flow and move. Drink lots of water over the next couple days. Honor what rises within. Let us know what's going on with you. Namaste. Have a beautiful day.
Namaste.